Hi guys, I'm Greg Howlett, and welcome to the last video that I'm shooting in my studio, living room studio. My wife is very happy about this, and I am too. We're moving downstairs to a new studio next week. But this last time, we're doing the video, and I'm glad to have today with me a studio musician named Danny Crawford. Welcome.
It's good to be here, Greg.
And Danny is one of those unsung heroes that I sometimes talk about. The guys that are sort of behind the scenes. The guys that actually make music happen. When you listen to music on the radio or you're listening to CDs, especially in the Southern gospel genre, but also country and bluegrass, you're going to hear his work. Everybody from Ricky Skaggs to goodness, in the Southern gospel world, probably about everybody, not everybody, but a lot of groups, and a lot of the groups that you hear. So we're going to pick his brain and talk through how he makes it happen, how he conceptualizes music, how he gets it into, from an idea into production, onto a CD. So we're going to take our time with this and do it over a few segments. But today, Danny, what I'd like to do, or in this segment, I want to talk about your background, how you got going in music. So walk me through that. You started playing at what?
I was 5 years old. My mom, she was a church piano player, and I would sit beside her and pick out the notes as she played, and just to see what blended.
Excuse my dog. My dog isn't going to bother you, but you can excuse him.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
Yeah.
And as I was growing up, I would sit and listen to her play on Sundays, and I would come home and maybe try to emulate some of what I heard. And my dad said that I would listen to TV commercials and run in the next room and copy it. But anyway, when I was, I think, 11, our organist left the church, and so I grew up in a very conservative type church. And my mom, she was the pianist, and I ended up being the organist at, I think, 11 years old. And I remember this lasted for a couple of years. And one Sunday when I was, I think, around 13, I went in for the Sunday morning service, and the organ was locked. And so I went to find the preacher and ask him what was going on. He said, "Well, I need to see you and your mom in my office." So he pulled us both in, and he looked at my mom. He said, "I've had to put a lock on the organ. He's playing it too jazzy." And basically, what I was doing was, you have your two keyboards with an organ and the pedals, and I was alternating the bass note on songs like "Power in the Blood" or "Glory to His Name," but for that particular environment, it was too jazzy. And so I got fired from my first job. Technically.
So you lasted in that for a few years, and then I assume that's not where your career ended.
No.
So where did it go from there?
When I was 13, I began playing for a local group in our area, and that was one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it enabled me to really develop my ear for music. My parents gave me lessons for probably about 4.5 years total, and I hated most of that time, because, as you well know, a lot of teachers, they don't know how to relate to someone who plays by ear, because they only play by music themselves, and so they're not kind of sure of what to do with you.
Sure.
I did have a couple of teachers that did help me some and were very patient with me, and so as I was playing for a local group, I did this for probably from the time I was 13 till around 23. Played for 2 or 3 different groups, but when I was 23, and an opportunity came my way. A friend of mine at the time was playing drums with a group from Atlanta, the Rex Nealon Singers, and they were considered full time, and the Nealons are still going, and so he got me an audition with Rex. Never forget that. It was so awesome, because I'll never forget when he walked in the room that day. He was probably 10 feet away from me, and the first words that he spoke, his voice was just so resonant and rich. It was just like he was just right in front of you, and one of the nicest men ever been around. And so Rex, he took a gamble on me and gave me a job, or gave me the job playing with those guys. And so that was kind of my venture into playing professionally.
Sure.
So um, the group that I started with when I was 13, actually a couple of weeks after I was playing with them, they went into the studio. I was going to make a little 45 record.
Mm-hmm.
And so they let me play on that. It was something where they were just using their own musicians. And that really got my interest in recording, because there was just something about that just kind of lit a fire in me. And so someone actually related to that group asked me to play on something of theirs. And it was just kind of one little project
Mm-hmm.
led to another. And so on through the time I was in high school and a few years beyond that, I got more involved playing sessions locally. I was really blessed in that one of the premier gospel studios that has ever been around was right there in Greenville, South Carolina, about 20 miles from where I live. And it was called Mark V Studios. And so I got to be friends with some of the folks there and got to play on some sessions. And so one job just kind of breeds another in that. And so I was starting to get fairly busy just playing sessions at a local level. And back in 1990, Karen Peck, who at the time was lead singer with the Nealons, she called me and said, would you be interested in us maybe putting a group together? And I said, sure, I'm willing to talk about that. And she said, well, I have a sister that sings, and my husband's learning to play guitar. And I told her, well, I know of a bass player and a good tenor singer. And so we met at my church, and we went over a song, and within just minutes we knew, wow, this could potentially really be something. And so that was literally the beginning of the birth of New River. And from and in case some of the people are interested, a lot of people find this humorous about the name New River.
Karen Peck, New River. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh, that's right. You bragged that you were the one that came up with the name.
It was funny because we didn't know what we were going to call it. We knew that it was going to be Karen Peck, but she didn't want it just to be the Karen Peck Singers. And so we all wrote down names and submitted it one time in a group meeting. About 2 years prior to that, my wife had given me a sweater, and at the time, J.C. Penney's and another company carried a line of clothing called New River Clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this sweater she gave me had big letters that said New River. And I told her then, I said, that would be a great name for a group, but I just kind of tucked it away and never thought more about it until we were looking for a name for New River. And so that was one of the names I wrote down on my list and submitted.
So you're telling me that New River has nothing to do with the river and heaven, or
the river of life. There's no spiritual significance
there's
at all.
nothing.
So the name actually came off of a sweater.
Oh my word! Oh well.
People don't trust.
Yeah. So the Karen Peck and New. So were you the recording musician? I know a lot of groups use other musicians in the studio. Is that how? Did that help you? Did you play on her projects?
Well, when we were actually rehearsing to put the group together, the record label Horizon Records signed the group to a deal, and because they wanted us to have a project ready when we actually started traveling, and so the session was scheduled, and actually Anthony Berger was supposed to play on it. Anthony was playing with the Kingsmen at the time, and also doing a lot of sessions. And something came up before the Kingsmen were out of town, and a few days ahead of time, Anthony found out he couldn't do it, and so Karen asked the record label would they consider letting me play on it, and I think it was, it was with the understanding if it doesn't work,
We'll go get a
get
real piano player.
Yeah. And so they were willing to take a gamble and let me play on it, and fortunately I knew some of the musicians that were actually going to be playing on the session, and so as it ended up that I played on it and things went well. Anthony also came in and played. I think later did some overdubs as well on some things, and it turned out well, and and so
That launches
just
everything.
yeah,
Because you had #1 hits on that project, which right or
yeah. There was,
yeah,
I think, 2 top 10, 1 number 1, and so when I was with Karen, each week we were playing with the different groups in the gospel field, and the group Gold City, they had a studio
sure.
at the time at their place in Gadsden, and I got asked to come out there to do a session, and so from there, that opened up kind of a door out there, and it's like any other business or industry, one job breeds another, and so it all kind of had an accumulative effect. People heard some of the stuff I'd played on, and they said, well, that record had some big songs on it. Let's get him to play on ours, or we'll get him to produce this. And so it kind of went from there. Plus, technology right then, around the early 90s, took a big turn with the introduction of the ADAT recording machine. And that literally put owning a studio within reach of the average guy. You could, at that point, you could take $5,000 or $10,000 and have a fairly decent little studio and be able to record 16 or 24 tracks of audio. And so more studios began springing up, and also the Horizon record label was really growing during that time, and so it just kind of snowballed, and before long, I was
Busy.
and I've been doing it full time.
It's funny, we were sitting here talking about the '90s like it was so long ago, which it really wasn't. But technology has come so far in the past 20 years. As a matter of fact, when you were starting in 1990, the process we have of punching today was you spliced and pasted together tape, right? Or you would tape together tape to make splices and fix.
You could punch in and fix mistakes, but if there was something where the whole band, there was times they literally would take a razor blade and have to splice the tape and edit out a piece, and now you literally are doing that with a mouse,
sure.
And it's seamless.
Different world, yeah. We were talking about earlier other things that have changed in the industry over time, and one of the things that I found interesting, maybe we didn't talk about this today, but another time we talked about the fact that the music in the Southern gospel industry has gotten a lot more sophisticated now compared to what it used to be. Talk about that in just a second.
If you listen to songs from back in the 60s and 70s, groups such as the Happy Goodmans, the Seago Brothers, the Hensons, a lot of those songs were they were shorter songs, 2.5 minutes to maybe 3 minutes, and the musical chord structures were pretty basic, 1-4-5. Most of it was just a few chords, and so you had shorter songs, more basic arrangements, and so it was very common to go in and do 10 songs because an album was usually 10 songs. They would do 10 songs in a day, and plus the technology was not there, to do multiple passes with different keyboard sounds because those type of keyboards had not been invented yet.
Sure.
And normally musicians, one guy might play guitar and maybe banjo or something, but now you've got longer. The songs are generally running longer. They're 3 to 5 minutes a lot of time, and the arrangements have gotten a good bit more complex at times. There's a lot more expectations for orchestra and a lot of that stuff, and so now people's expectations haven't necessarily changed. They still want to do 10 songs on a project and want to do it all in a day, but they're wanting you to squeeze a whole lot more stuff into that box than you had to 30, 40 years ago.
Right. So to sort of follow up on that, for those of you not too familiar with recording, one of the things that's interesting is a typical recording, even for a group you hear on the radio, you have 10 tracks in one day. And you have 10 tracks that are done in a day. The musicians all come in, and you just knock out. I guess you budget an hour per track or something, and that usually will suffice. But it's not as easy as it used to be. I guess the songs are, well, first of all, if they're longer. But the other thing you mentioned was passes, or how many instruments you would play. Like in the past, you would play just a piano. Now you bring a keyboard and you do a passive piano, passive electric piano, and so on, and it can make a long day for sure.
Yeah, and you look at how technology has progressed. In some ways, we look at it as, wow, this should really make things go quicker, which it does in certain ways. But, 20 years ago, a 24-track recording machine was the Mac Daddy,
Yeah,
and so you could do 24 tracks of audio, but one of those machines was going to cost you $40,000 or $50,000.
yeah,
Well, now you literally can go download a piece of software for $49, or in some cases even free, for your laptop, and there's unlimited tracks.
sure, yeah,
And so now that they have all this access, and it's like, well, we got room, let's put it on.
yeah.
So,
So the technology, I guess, in that regard, is a double-edged sword, or whatever, however you put it, blessing and a curse, whatever. Um, but I want to talk about that in a lot more detail. We'll get into that again. I know most of you will never play in sessions. Some of you will. Some of you will want to. So we'll get into that. But really, the big picture is that I sort of want to get across is how do you think about music? Because there are applications for that, even if you're not a studio guy. Applications for church and other things that you guys do. So we're going to get into that. Specifically, we're going to talk about licks, and we'll talk about charting in future segments. And I will see you guys hopefully at the next segment.
sounds good.